by, and you were married, and nobody has time to
even me. Since I left that home, I've never gone back there because I said to myself, the person that took me there is no longer there. So why should I go back there?
Yeah, exactly.
I concentrate on other things. Maybe my son one day, one time will find the roots and go. But for me,
to revive the relationship, because life keeps changing it so fast. And if you have time, you prefer to invest it in a project like humanism or what you're doing at the moment is more rewarding for you.
Exactly.
Hi, Ragnar. There is... So we will be able to share lesson 11 and 12, or is unlikely?
So, how are you, Jose? I didn't know that you had the first name Jose.
Oh, yes. Jose.
Yeah.
It's because in this version of the program, I register again in order to have other facilities. So I have two Googles.
Yeah. Lavina?
Hello, Lavina.
Hello,
Ragnar,
Lavina.
hi.
Good to see you.
Hi.
How are you?
We are fine.
Hi, Julius.
Hello. How are you?
Hi, Ragnar. Hi, everyone.
Yeah.
Hi, Antonio.
Hello. I
How are
hear
you?
that things in Eldoret are doing very well, no?
Though I'm in Kisumu, but everything is planned well.
But you participate in this program of the 2 weeks remotely.
Yes, everything is planned well. We also had an activity. It went so well.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
We had a meeting today about the disabled and gender-based violence, 1:00. But we will. I will share it after this meeting, and also I'm recording this meeting. I can share it.
Oh, great! Thank you.
Okay.
So what I was thinking, because it's not possible for Rose or Dorothy to share the screen with in the book of self-liberation with lessons 11 and 12. Do you think you could do that, Ragnar, or do you have the book in English?
I think so.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I don't have it here. Maybe I have it.
Ragnar, can I forward for you the soft copy if you don't mind, and from my hand?
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Did you
And I sent you that thermometer. Huh? Sorry.
Did you forward it on WhatsApp or? Okay, I'm forwarding it myself. So I have it here.
You have it there.
Yeah.
I've already sent it to you too, from on your WhatsApp.
Yeah. Okay. I sent it
Okay.
on internal development.
So it's lesson 11, if we could share that. And then the next page, and we get up to lesson 12. We'll see if we can advance more.
This tension 11. No, lesson 8. So,
Yeah, you go advancing is lesson 11 that we have to get. That it says the centers, human types, an exercise for the vegetative center.
lesson 10. Let's go. Okay. Okay. Well, I'm not a host, but see what I can do. Oh, yeah. Okay. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yes, we can see it.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ragnar. So when you indicate we can start.
Yeah.
Yes, I think, Antonio, we should just start. The rest will get us. We are 11 here, so we can just start. Yeah, thank you.
We have advanced something about the centers and the centers of response, as they are called in our theory, psychological theory. They are specializations of the nervous system, and also with participation of some circuits of the endocrinological system. That means there are glands also that are responsible for that. They tend to have a center of greater activity in different localizations of the body. For example, traditionally, we know that the intellectual center is related to the head. The fundamental intellectual functions, controls of memory, for example, of associations, of abstraction, they tend to all be in the cortical areas of the brain. It doesn't mean that other centers also are connected to functions in parts of the cortex of the brain. So it doesn't mean that others are controlled from other parts, but we observe that, and traditionally in different histories and different nations, for a long, long time, they have been associated to the emotion to the heart, because it seems that the expression of emotions and the endocrinological, the glandular activity that is associated to the experience of emotions and sentiments and all that tends to have a reaction in the heart. I mean, we tend to feel in the chest, in the center of the chest, different type of expressions. If we are anguished, if we are in love, if we are whatever, worried about something or other, we seem to read emotions with activities at that level. The motricity we were explaining the other day, the motor activities, the responsibility over the movement, we see it more or less in the umbilical area, in the core, in the level of the middle, in the center of the torso. I mean, and the vegetative is distributed all over because it's a general economy of the body, the vegetative center. It doesn't have a localization in particular. For example, if you get ill and you have a fever and you perceive that you are lacking energy, you don't feel that specifically in the head or in the chest or in the umbilical area, but in the whole body, if you want, lack of energy. You see, it doesn't have localization. That is interesting. And these specializations of the nervous system and the glandular system and the other nervous functions are responsible for the response into the world of our actions, of our behaviors. Because we process something in the consciousness, in our thinking, and when we decide to do something, or we decide to experience an emotion, or we give an order to the motor center to move in one direction or other direction, I have to go out of the house and go to the supermarket. First, I have a thought about that. And then I may observe that I like it or don't like it because perhaps I don't want to get out of the house because it's cold. But finally, when I decide to do it, I start to move the body in the direction of that thought and that feeling. And then there I am, walking to the supermarket. You see the process in different stages where orders are being given by the intellect and the emotion in its own part and the muscles, the motricity, the movement, and there you go. And the vegetative, because you have to spend energy and you have to have a clear intention of what you want to do. So these different specializations of action, they are used in different intensity in each one of us. So from that viewpoint, we could say that we tend to work more with one of those centers than with others. And from the moment that we are born and in our early life, we go specializing more the activity of one center over others. Some people are more intellectual. They are more interested in ideas, in concepts, in activities that we could call intellectual. Other people are more into relationships. They are much more emotional. They love fundamentally human contact. They tend to be friendly, to have lots of activities, social activities. You see, there is a whole direction of your energy that you can see it reflected in your day-to-day preferences and activities that go in the direction of the emotion. Motor people are those who prefer to connect with the world through action. Are the people who are very good at sports, who are always exercising themselves. Even the physical structure of these different human types it tends to reflect the priority of use of one or the other. The motor people are more muscular. It seems to be a primary in them, the physical direction. The system of muscles tend to be more active, They are normally very good in activities that have to do with sports, with exercise, with running, with developing the physical aspect of different tasks in the day-to-day life. They enjoy sports, and most of the socialization, for example, is through sport activities that you can play to a professional level or you can play to an amateur level, but you prefer to go in that direction. Or they are all the time moving. They like dancing. They like running. Yes, it's being outdoors and being in movement. Or maybe they play ping pong or they play indoor sports. But is that coordination? Is that speed of response? Is that reflexes, physical reflexes? And the vegetatives normally are all-rounders, and they are good and they can act in different activities, but also you tend to see that they prioritize the physique. People who are gourmet, people who like good food, especially because everybody likes food and everybody likes it. But the body seems to be playing a particular role. If they come to a house and they have to choose, they will look the more comfortable place, the softer bed. They will look first at the kitchen before other facilities in the place. Well, it's subtle, but it shows the tendencies of the energy to follow in the direction of that specialization of action. In reality, in the movement, in the internal work, we want to be all-rounders, to have ability and disposition and a good operation of the vegetative center that has to do with the general health of the body, with the motor center, so we have to be able and capable in terms of sports, and the intellectual and emotional centers. That is the aspiration of the humanists. So we have to detect in these works that we are initiating in psychophysics where we have the greatest difficulties or the greatest lacks, if you want, and to go strengthening those particular points. Many times we will, because the interconnection that there is between the centers, if you have difficulties in one of them, it will affect the corresponding emotional center and the corresponding motor center, because they are connected in the way that the energy circulates is in the subparts of the centers, and all the centers will have a subpart that is motor, a subpart that is emotional, and a subpart that is intellectual, even in the intellectual center or in the motor center, etc. So it's a complex. If you do all the connections in a graphic and you have all the parts and subparts of the center, you will see how the energy could move from one particular part of one center into the next, into the next, into the next. And because energy is circulating all the time, is like having a system of computers. But the interesting thing is that there are not only mental operations, because those are responsible of all the actions in the body. For example, if you are walking on the street and you move into the road because you want to cross, and suddenly a car that hasn't noticed your movement does a maneuver and could have killed you, then you will see the first thing that you do is the vegetative center produce a secretion of endocrinal activity of your glands. Then the motor center probably will jump in the opposite direction of the car. And then the emotional center, when you realize that you could have been killed, you will start to shout to the driver, I don't know what, indignant. And later on, the intellectual center, all this can happen in a few seconds. It's not the next day. The intellect will be thinking, shit, that could have killed me, and then I would be dead, and then the hospital, and the different operations and different speeds of response, being the faster the vegetative, and then the motor, and then the emotion, and the intellect. And they have different responsibilities in what relates also to the general economy of the body. So it's a concept that in the beginning, because nobody explains those things, and we have not studied in our formation anywhere the operation of the centers. In some philosophical systems, there is a certain attention to that. For example, in the Indian philosophies, the chakras, the concept of the chakra, they are the centers, nervous centers that are responsible of your emotion, of your intellect. They are represented sometimes in different manners with light and with colors. And probably if you go to the traditions, educational traditions in Africa, you will find a lot of some of these things that were communicated in the tribes when they start to teach the children the different skills like hunting and like being able physically to develop resistance to the external conditions, to connect with the understanding of nature and how to recognize the different species, the capacity to run long distances and to waste the least possible amount of energy. All these type of things that were to prepare the members of the tribe while they were children and they start to grow until they become full adults in all these skills. And probably there is lots of knowledge. And the shamans that were those characters that have to be like the medical people and the wise people in the tribe that had all that knowledge, maybe there is a whole culture related to the specific training and the recognition of these centers of response. So it's not a new idea for the human being. The thing is that now in this historical period, that is, the human being is so orientated towards external things and has abandoned so much himself or herself as a human, many of these knowledge and understandings have been forgotten, or they are not properly compiled. But in the proportion that we advance over these studies, you will be able to rescue lots of valuable and complementary information from the old cultures in Africa. Whatever the difference between the different nations, doesn't need to be the particular population of one region or another. Many times those skills have to do also with the geographical landscape. The adaptation in each one of those different territories require different type of skills because the landscape is different, from the forest to the savanna to the desert to the river. There are lots of different skills, and the specializations of these different groups that have adapted very well to those geographical areas have to do with special skill in relation to the development of all these centers. So that in general, the different speeds of response, the activity of one and the other, that they have the particularities. When we study more in detail the centers, you will be able to go into more detail about the specialization that, for example, in general, the intellect has associations between images, between ideas, the capacity to retain and to memorize, and the capacity to abstract thinking in the intellect. So the people who are intellectual, that they are professors in the university, they are always reading books and writing essays and that type of thing. Of course, also because the natural tendency is for the energy to go into the intellect, also they develop additional skills because of the practice of the professions and the studies and all that. So they have better retention, they have better memory, better logic in association, better all of these things. And the motor people also, depending also what other activities, the tendencies of the centers that predominate over the work of others will push them in some directions in life. If you are able in the motor sense, but at the same time you have a very strong artistic tendency, you would be very good in dancing, in ballet, for example, you know that systems of dance that is a ballet. Is practiced abundantly in the Western cultures, but in Europe. But they are equivalent in the field of dance and in the field of music in all the different cultures. So you have enormous, interesting experiences in Africa. And in terms of sport, because of the demands of the environment, you have the best runners in the world have been for a number of years in Africa, because the speed that they have to develop in order to hunt, in order to adapt to one condition or another, have created races that are extremely able in that respect. And if you look at the Olympic Games, and you see in the proportion of the populations, the proportion of people that excel in the motor tests, in the motor sports, in running, in sports, in basketball, in football, etc. The best players are also that come from some regions. They are in proportion in many regions, but there is particularly emphatic in the case of Africa. So you look at your environment and you start to recognize some of these concepts and some of these explanations about how people are. On the other hand, different human types can be derived. We can develop a typology in the sense that there are some shapes, physical shapes, that correspond more, as I was saying before, to the predominance of one center over another centers. So those very elongated sort of human types, they are long and tend to be thin at the same time in some proportion, tend to be the intellectuals, as if they were always working in the head and less attention to the motor or emotion. The emotional people tend to have slightly more roundish shapes, and they are very connected. They tend to predominate in relation to other people. They are always ready to smile, to organize socially. They are very able to get on well with many different groups. Well, there are tendencies that tend to reflect the predominance of one particular functioning over others. And that with time has developed also particular physical forms. Or you could say that is because of the physical conditioning and the particular shape and form of the body, that also they have developed the character that corresponds, because they are more able, stronger in a particular line of work than others. And so that seems to accommodate the tendencies, the tastes, the preferences, and the manners of operating in the world. And all that combination is very unique in different people, but all can be classified in a family that tends to identify the predominance of the intellect, the predominance of the emotion, predominance of the motricity, the predominance of the vegetative center. Sex is a specialization of the vegetative center. It's responsible for the distribution of energy into all the other centers. Is very important, and many times when we have exhausted our load of energy in our intellect, in our emotion, in our motricity, also sex tends to get completely void of tension. Otherwise, sex will always be able to accommodate and to regulate the flow of energy of the whole system. When sex gets discharged, it tends to balance the intensity of energy in all the other centers. And so you will find, and since you are studying in particular the atypical behaviors that can translate in violence, in gender violence, you observe that whatever the rules of the place, whatever the punishments of the place, there is a tendency in some cases, because of suppression of sex or because of the particular tendency of certain human types that, they tend to, in one moment, to express their aggression and the violence through the sexual behavior. Attacking, of course, like animals of prey, somebody that is more vulnerable and somebody that is a softer target. So all these elements in a proportion are interconnected in what has to do with the determination of tendencies of behavior and conducts in general. It's very interesting for us, more than do classifications of other human beings, is to classify ourselves and to see how is the connection of our centers of response to be able to recognize one human type in relation to others, and to be able to identify where we need to do more training and strengthening the flows of energy in those particular aspects of our behavior. That is very important, because if lots of energy tends to go through one center in detriment of other centers, the problem is that you will have an imbalanced person that in a X situation, instead of being able to respond in a proportional manner with harmony, with equilibrium, will tend to send the energy through a channel that is a wrong channel for that particular situation. For example, in a certain situation, somebody is very much in distress. A child is crying and something very unfair happened to them, or he is very scared. And so will not be enough to give an explanation to the child. Will need to be taken, to give a hug, to give affection. So the affectional response is the most important in some types of cases. The intellectual response, when you have to organize a problem that is very confusing or whatever, you will say, well, but first, why don't we discuss things in order? The logical thing to do is such and such thing, and you will be able to quote some other similar situation that you had as an experience, and you share it. And then in other cases, there is not much time to blah, 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 to consider too much, to feeling too much, but you have to act quickly. And then the mototype will immediately start in action and will resolve the problem without more discussion, without more ado. If you read novels and you see the different characters and the behavior of them, they all reflect those tendencies and those different patterns of behavior so clearly. It's fantastic to be able to see those things in ourselves, because when we tend to excessively operate in one level, in one particular center, in detriment of others, we tend to compensate the normal work, the normal type of response into the world that should be emotional, should be motor, or should be of another type, or purely vegetative. And in the proportion that we can test all the parts and subparts of all our centers, we will find difficulties and facilities in the operation of each one of these centers. And so we have to do our own classification. We don't want to go telling the other person, because you are like this, like that, and you should do. We have to discover it. What we are going to do is general tests, and we will measure the facility or difficulty that we have in regard to one of these centers, another one of these centers, until we can balance them all. Because we will discover that we need to strengthen some particular functions of each one of them. The retention of memory, for example, is very important. There are lots of exercises of memorizing and lots of practices that gradually you will improve in that respect. And instead of avoiding situations where your memory is being tested, you will be able to feel confident in all the different aspects. And then you will reach a higher level of harmony, and therefore a much more efficient and effective way to relate with other human beings, to perform in your activities, in your jobs, in your professions, in etc., etc. So it's important to attend to the circulation of energy within our circuits. And that is precisely what we are talking about. There are nervous circuits, and there are connections, and there are habits. There are things that become, through repetition, they become habits. And many times those habits are the wrong thing to do. And the repetition and the tendency of the energy always following that direction creates an imbalance that to an extent cripples you. Is instead of having a holy person that is very complete, very proportional, that can respond effectively in different fields and regarding different challenges is the day-to-day life, and give the right response and accommodate to situations, you tend to be out of balance. As somebody that is always about to fall, for example, it's not good. Much better to learn to walk straight and in a balanced manner and with good direction, because that will take you further. And so it's a very important aspect of personal growth to understand these concepts and to be able to test them, to train them, and to balance them. We are always aiming at that, at having the right balance. Obviously, even if you practice a sport, you are not going to be a super star in sport, a super achiever, but it's enough if you are good enough, and you can enjoy any sports, and you can perform to a certain extent, etc., etc. So that's the idea, not to be absolutely excellent and stand out, but obviously you have natural tendencies, and sometimes you will discover that it's important to strengthen your tendencies. If you are good about something, or for some particular activity, why not? That is an asset. Then it will be clear to you that with no detriment of developing other skills and other facilities, you will be the one in the social group that will excel in that particular one. All those things are important things to have it clear to ourselves. So that is a general introduction about the centers, that gradually we can go into more specifics. I don't know if there are questions at this stage that you would like to ask. If it's not the case, we could do
in the chat box.
Sorry?
In the chat box, we will see Antonio Opala. He says, think tanks don't give priority to sex. I don't know if he wants to,
Think tanks, yeah. So what happens is that the think tanks are groups of people specialized as the concept that exists about the think tanks.
Yeah.
Those are groups of people who are specialized in a particular area that sit together to discuss how to tackle the fundamental problems in a particular area. For example, one of the thematic tables within the forum is the equivalent of a think tank. For example, you are thinking how to tackle the problems of violence, that because we tend to specialize in the humanist movement in violence in order to overcome it, and you concentrate specifically in gender violence, and therefore all the people participating in that thematic table, they have a specialization of one type or other type, either because they work sexually, or because they have been victims of it, or because in terms of education, they have faced situations that they understand that they can contribute to resolve, etc. And that by working together, then they can give a articulated response to that particular problem affecting society. That's more the concept of think tank when we see how the work works. So I don't know if it's what Antonio Opala was referring to. But
Anthony.
Yes.
Yes. Good evening, all.
Voilà.
What I was referring to is a situation whereby, you're always thinking you don't want to be disturbed. When you get this, you look at it as a negative progression, because you also want to continue working and doing your job. So maybe you just do it as a laxity, but all in all, it doesn't bother you.
Exactly. We need that to be able in all different areas, in all different abilities and skills. That's why we are given all these specializations, and that's why we have all these different centers, because we are going to face situations where we need to apply in one direction or another direction. For example, when you are studying, of course, you don't want to be disturbed. If you are doing your course in university, we know that there is a high demand for activities of study and writing essays and that type of thing. And therefore, most of the academic activity concentrates for a period of time in study and writing, but not all your life. You complete your course and then you have to go to the world and start to apply what you learn in theory in the university. So there are moments of the day and moments of the week and moments in our life where it's more important one aspect of the activity with one center than others, although all the others also continue operating, because we cannot decide, I am not going to experience any emotion. It's not something that you decide intellectual. Your psychophysical structure will do what is required in order for you to adapt and to survive. So really the margin of freedom that we have to modify these particular behaviors is limited. But if we don't have any knowledge about any of these things, the margin of influence or modification that we have of our own physical structure, psychophysical structure, is very limited. Because if you don't even know that something exists, how can you modify anything? More limited. So we have a conceptual idea, a conceptual frame. Then we have some techniques of study and detection that allows you to have a different picture of yourself, as if you had a camera that you could measure different things that what the photographic camera of the telephone will show you. Yes, that has to do more with the contact and the directions of the energy. And then you have a clearer picture, and with that picture you can start to introduce changes of things that you find that they are inadequate conditions, and to also enhance or emphasize other qualities or conditions that you recognize that they are very important and they are not enoughly efficient in use or efficient enough.
Following Obala's comment in the chat box, Esther Mapisa says the following: thanks so much. My take is you have well explained on how response over things happening to us, and explain particular patterns in the community known as football, runners, etc. How I can sustain all situations in line. So this is her summary at this stage. You want to respond to that, Antonio?
Well, I agree with the observations that it's expressing, but I think the way of modifying and sustaining this effort is thanks to the self-awareness. Self-awareness is a very important faculty because it's the capacity to give direction to your mechanical tendencies. We call the mechanicity of the human being is those things that we repeat like an automatron because we have never been able to choose or to even recognize or identify what is the tendency that we have in ourselves. But when we become aware, and then we can give a different direction to the operations of our psychophysical system, we change. We change the direction. We are aware of things. For example, I am a glutton that tends to eat lots of biscuits every day. And so I check myself and I start to put on weight. And I say, well, it doesn't matter a bit, but biscuits are so nice. And then continue. And at one point, my trousers will not close properly. And then that is a bit of a problem. And also, I will have less success with the opposite sex or with the same. I don't know what are the preferences of everyone. But then we'll start to have difficulties if I increase my weight because I am eating in excess. And so that will help me to regulate, and then I will start dieting. Nobody likes to diet, but with discipline and with an intention, a decision that you have taken not at the level of your body, you have taken at the level of your thought or at the level of your emotion, and then you change, and then you reduce to your normal weight, and then you change your diet in order to do it in the future without much effort. And so it's the same thing. It's the same thing. I give the example of the vegetative, the physical shape, because we all have experiences of one sort of another. The opposite is that you become so thin that now you cannot do even basic things. And so the same thing happens in relation to your emotional behavior, intellectual behavior. A center of self-awareness that we call the capacity to be intentional about the things that we do or we don't do, and to give a conscious direction to our life. In that point, because we have enough understanding and a clearer perspective of our tendencies, of course we can have a decision to change in one direction or other direction. We take the reins, if you want. Otherwise, the development of life is purely mechanical. That means other circumstances that are always deciding for you, and you just follow the mechanical tendency of your psychophysical structure. That for us is not interesting. We have to develop our conscious, because we aspire to overcome our violence. And you will not be able to overcome your violence, personal, individual, psychological violence, if you do not understand how is it generated and how it's compensating other type of lacks or deficiencies within yourself. And you do not have the ability to balance your psychophysical system in order to choose a behavior that is not violent in all its forms. Psychological violence, physical violence, moral violence, etc., etc. So to gain the freedom, we need to have information about ourselves. I need to have then the possibility to change the things that we do not like because they are not convenient for other human beings and for you yourself in life. So it's essential to have intentionality and to have awareness, to be conscious. And that is something that we will grow gradually through our studies. So the sense, the meaning of all this is huge, is important. It's the most exciting thing that we could attempt to do. Exactly, self-realization, yeah. So these are all concepts that we can frame gradually, but I would like now to suggest some exercises. It's an exercise for the vegetative center that is very much in connection with the ones that we have been doing through the relaxation. These have to do with the breathing, what is called the complete breathing, in the sense that avoiding unnecessary tensions in the body and mental tensions is essential to better dispose of our energy in the day-to-day life. Well, the same thing we can do, or equivalent, with the breathing. We all tend to have bad breathing habits, in the sense that we do not replenish the amount of oxygen that we need in our lungs. Sometimes we are breathing all the time, but we are not aware that we tend to feel only the lower part of the lungs, and that we tend to have a short breathing and more intense, but where the amount of oxygen, of air that they are incorporating into the system is reduced. And of course, we tend to be more tired and to have less available energy. And in time, also that conditions particular positions of the body, postures, that are not the best that we can achieve. And so, this exercise here explains that we are related to certain bodily postures. They are also linked to definite ways of breathing. Knowing this, a person can modify his negative emotional states by adopting correct postures and changing the way he or she breathes. Of course, these modifications do not occur instantly. When you change your breathing or posture, the corresponding change in your internal emotional state will occur only after a delay of a few minutes. Let us explain this further. It's not instant. You have to change the way of breathing. You have to breathe completely. And after a while, you will note that your emotional tone is improving. When I am in a bad emotional state, I will have confused thinking. I will use incorrect bodily postures and breathe deficiently. If I now stand up and walk using correct posture, the negative emotional state will still continue through inertia for some time. However, if I keep my correct posture, I will find that after a few minutes, my emotional state will, in fact, begin to improve. My emotions will also improve in the same way if I correctly control my breathing. But before changing my breathing, I must first observe how I normally breathe, and only then learn to modify it. We distinguish three levels in the lungs. The lower part that corresponds more or less to the level of the stomach, the middle part that has to do more or less with the level of your chest, and the upper part that has the top high, that almost with the level of the throat. So if you look at the shape of a lung, it's like that, like a drop, more or less, elongated. And we tend to always feel mechanically, because of habits, the lower part. Of course, if you have been into sports or into another sort of training dynamic, one of the first things that they will teach you is how to breathe properly and how to keep the maximum oxygenation of the psychophysical system. So we will present a descriptive model of the various types of human responses. The description makes it easier to understand how adopting correct postures and mastering a correct breathing system makes one's intellectual, emotional, and motor activities much more balanced and in equilibrium. Being able to improve one's internal state in these ways is a valuable tool, and it deserves some explanation. I don't know if I will exceed, but this will take us in all and one practice 10 minutes. Shall we go ahead? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. In our general scheme, we say human activities are regulated by several localized nervous and glandular functions that we call centers. We distinguish 4 distinct centers in difference. The intellectual center that regulates the elaboration of thought processes, and the emotional center that regulates the emotions as response to internal and external phenomena, the motor center that regulates the physical mobility of an individual and all bodily movements, and the vegetative center that regulates the internal activities of the body, such as digestion, metabolism, circulation of blood, etc. These 4 centers function at different speeds. The intellectual center is the slowest, and the vegetative center is the fastest. It is important to note that in general, in a vegetative change will modify the functioning of all the other centers. They will react to the vegetative center, but at slower speeds. We also note the motor center activity can change the activities of the emotional and intellectual center. When we speak of a favorable effects of correcting body postures, we are referring to the fact that by changing the operation of the motor center, one modifies the response of the emotional and intellectual center. Similarly, when one changes the correct breathing, one is changing the vegetative center, so it will improve the activity of all the other centers. It is possible to formulate a human typology based on these 4 centers. We will not develop this concept here. So I suggest that we do a first practice of that. You are sitting in a comfortable position. You pull down your stomach, and through the back of your throat, you slowly breathe in. First of all, you expel all the air that you had in the lungs with a bit of pressure of the lips. And then you feel the bottom part, the stomach part of the lungs. For example, I breathe in there. My tummy is dilated out, but I know that I didn't acquire all the amount of air that I am capable of. So now, pressing a bit the lips, expel all the air that you have taken. Now, again, slowly fill again the stomach part and the central part, the chest, and not to the top, just the bottom and central part. Try to breathe through the back of your nose. You can retain a bit the air and then you expel it slowly. When you apply a pressure in the lips to expel the air, that counter pressure that you do allows you to empty the lungs in full. Now you will try to slowly again fill your lower part, the middle part and the top part, up to the neck if you want. You see? Try a couple of times to go through these 3 different stages, and then we will add to that movement of your arms if you want. that also helps. See, you can see a bit. I am standing here to see more or less the thorax. When you follow the lower part of the lungs, you can open your arms gradually to the sides. You see, with that movement of the arms in the 3 stages that we have indicated will allow, because of the change in the cavity of the breathing, the lung cavity, to fill your lungs to the maximum. In systematic stages that you will go measuring yourself and you will have the feeling to it. When you have fully breath in that way, you retain for a few seconds and then you gradually expel the air. And the more that we practice, for example, if you are particularly tired, you had a very heavy day, etc., but still you need to do some study or to write something or whatever, it's enough that you do 3 or 4 of this complete breathing, and then you will find that your energy, as a result of the oxygenation additional that you have received, tends to go up. Maybe it will not be instant that you expel the last bit of air and you will be full of energy. But in general, you will find that you have a greater disponibility, and that the tiredness that was almost falling you asleep has sort of disappeared, and that you have additional disponibility to do operations in the other centers. When the same as that correct body postures, when we incorporate this correct breathing to our lifestyle, to our manner of being, to our day-to-day routines, well, our positive states and the capacity to neutralize shocking negative facts during the day tends to be reduced. And you empower yourself enormously in your day-to-day life. Of course, in the next session, we can review these practices, and you can comment about your experience with them, and those are acting directly over the motor and vegetative center with the correct body postures and the complete breathing. And we could leave it here. Obviously, with we can exchange if you have any curiosity, any doubts, any things that you want to talk additional. We can send an email or a message in WhatsApp or within the list that we have for our personal internal work. So it doesn't mix with other things that we are doing. Which will, because these are consultations of a more technical type, and if we mix all together, other people will get confused probably. Yes.
I wanted to make a little comment.
Yes.
And it is in general terms that the highest value in what you, in my mind, in what you have been teaching us is this element of awareness, you know. And it is really interesting when you start to, in an increasing manner, to have this delayed action, you know, that you are in a situation, you are in some task or whatever you need to do or want to do, and you always have this little distance that you have the critical, the self-awareness. Is this giving me the signals of unitive action? So it's yes, it is not easy to explain it, but this has through times been the most valuable quality that I find that we can foster.
Perfect. I agree 100% with what you're saying, Julius. Definitely. And if you incorporate this complete breathing into your routine, your daily life, when you are in a situation where you are nervous, where you have to talk in public, when you have to sit for an exam, where you need to have a clear mind, whatever, you do 3, 4, 5 or 6 of these full breathings, complete breathing, and you will notice the change, the disponibility, the opening of your emotional state. That is extremely important. You are calmer, and you are in general much more in a better disponibility to whatever is challenging you. Mm-hmm. So they are very practical things.
Anthony is asking here, is snoring form of breathing? That's a very articulate question from Obala.
Yes, I didn't see the question.
It is in the chat box.
Uh-huh. Anthony, is snoring form of breathing? I don't. What happens is that I don't know. I think there is lots of theory about snoring, Obala. Maybe you have explored that more. Some people says that they don't snore because nobody. Some other people, because many times when they are sleeping with others in the same room, they are being criticized that you are very noisy, that you snore so much that why don't you go and sleep outside? And you feel that you are an antisocial, that you don't have any control over your snoring. But probably has to do with the positioning of the body when you sleep. And that affects your breathing, because what produces the noise of the snoring is the occlusion of some part of the respiratory channel. That is my guess. Probably you know more because you are specialized in aspects of sport, Anthony. I don't know.
What I can say is the snoring aspect. I've seen it more so with those people with big bodies. I think those people who don't take care of their bodies. I don't know. Everybody has his own way of life, but that is that. Now, what I wanted to share about the things that we'll be doing. We also need to be very cautious in the kind of way we are doing it, because you don't do it to perfection. Because when you've not been doing it, you start breathing in and you feel like the bladders are tight, everything is like that. You'll definitely want to release easily, and maybe it might give you a problem. So it is a gradual thing, and you should make it a habit. Not really that you should do it that because you want to succeed, but every day, or you can take about all thrice a day, 4 times a day, and maybe at a count of maybe 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, so that it is a regular thing and you're used to it. You don't just force it. It can create problems too.
Exactly. Nothing should be forced, because there are predispositions in each one of us. There are particularly shapes and habits, and everything that you try to modify in a sort of aggressive way towards yourself, you can have negative consequences. But as you say, 3, 4, 5 full exercises would be plenty for the day, and will take less than 3 or 4 minutes. Yes, until it becomes a...
Anthony, I think I was also been a teacher. Can they kindly clap for me?
What is that?
I'm saying I've been a good teacher also. Can they kindly clap for me?
I can give an additional.
Yeah.
Sorry, Rose.
I'm just responding to Obala. We've clapped.
I'm not hearing.
Yeah, it's not very good. The sound.
Anyway, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, for your attention and the feedback, and then we will. If you need to comment about any aspects of the practices during the week, I'll be happy to discuss further, and then we'll review these things in different moments in the process of studying the sentence. And so you will not be lacking of relevant information.
Wilfreda's hand is up.
Winifred,
Yeah.
raising a hand.
Yes,
Can
Winifred.
you respond to her?
Yes. But I have another question.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. I'm sorry I joined a little bit late. I've been hearing things about snoring, like in the side of Africans.
Yes.
They always consider it as a myth, child. So I don't know whether this thing is true because I've been hearing some explanation about positioning when someone is sleeping. So our side here, we consider it as a myth that the child develop in that process of what? Childbirth, separation between the mom and what? The child. So I don't know whether this thing is true. Some clarity, please.
Yes. Would be. I am sure that there is lots of literature about that, because snoring is something that affects the social life of all the sleepers one way or another. And maybe there are people who have studied this problem of snoring in depth. And there are lots of things. If you Google it, you will get some insights or some literature that you can consult for free and to get a picture of it. At the moment, I sleep on my own, so I don't care if I snore or not. But in different times of my life, people have mentioned that, yeah, you are snoring. If it doesn't become an obstacle or something that affects the closer people in the household, I don't think that you need to worry too much. I was speaking without a microphone. Yeah. I was saying that if it doesn't affect you socially or other people near you and the family, I mean, perhaps it's not something that should concern too much any one of us. Would you agree with it? Rose?
Okay, mine is not a question, but it's just a comment.
A comment, yeah, good.
From the session, the whole session, when we started up to the end, I've realized that self-realization is very key when you want to see on how you handle centers of response. Because when you realize yourself and you realize also the people around you, you'll help yourself even to avoid pressure, environment that you are, and also different things that you may encounter. So self-realization is the key. If you have it and you learn it, you're good to go. Thank you.
Absolutely. That's a very relevant comment. It's very, very interesting, because all our process of self-development is oriented towards gaining greater awareness, greater consciousness, greater understanding. And obviously that has an impact in our relationship with others, because we are more sensitive to them. There are things that also we can transmit, talking about our own experience, that can benefit them. And our adaptation in society and our acceptance from other people to us, because we'll change our behavior in very important manners, our acceptance will be much greater. And so that is good for everyone. It's a win-win.
Yes, Anthony.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I've just recalled on something. Today, after the training with our senior team, which is composed of averagely 17 years,
yeah,
I was trying to tell them that if they don't talk about themselves, they don't express anything about themselves, how will you know how we can help them? Because they need to talk, they need to share, so that you can share together and see and have a solution to something positive.
Exactly.
So that is what I was saying. Self-realization comes out when you speak and honestly speak about something. Then your people are able to share and you're helped.
Yeah. And the good thing of this works, when you have gone through the syllabus and you want to extend it to some of the people studying with you, practicing the sport, is that they will develop a confidence, a trust, and a comradeship amongst themselves that will allow them to talk freely and to communicate without any shame about things, because they will realize, as a result of this teamwork, that we are also similar, and that the same things that once times we hide or we are ashamed of sharing are things that affect everyone. And when we start to communicate in that way that you express, Anthony, is when people can really learn from one another. And then they can take the best experiences of the others and incorporate them. And the whole group benefit and grows together. And so it's ideal. It's a very good indicator of progress, psychological and physical progress. Mm. Because I assume that you will become instructors of all these things that we are studying together. So we can benefit many. Sometimes we can do it as a systematic syllabus over a number of months, but also sometimes we can develop 2 or 3 techniques, give the explanations of context, and people can go with practices, and the practices are beneficial in themselves. Everything that has to do with the emotional opening is extremely, extremely important, because it gives such a good feeling about ourselves and the others.
Philip, can you please mute?
Well, if because we will have plenty of time to talk about each one of these things further, and eventually we hope that we will be able to as we were saying, to after a few months of practices, that means when we have completed the psychophysics, to have a training over a period of 3 or 4 days. You could do it in Eldoret or wherever you have the facilities to do that. We can have a screen and we can discuss openly, as we are doing now, but you will be able to do the testings of all these practices for each one of the centers of response, and taking notes. And you also have to start writing your biographies, because when you write the story of our life, then we discover lots of very important things from the psychological viewpoint. And when you do those works near other people, you don't need to share the things that you don't want to share. But it's important for each one of us to understand our biography, because it's our life, it's our memory. And everything that we do in our day-to-day life is with action of our memory. Whatever has recorded there affects the way that we understand the world, that we look at ourselves, that we look at other people, etc. When we organize all the data of the memory and we see the structure of our lives, because one thing is to have separate data and it's very incoherent. But when we can see the tendencies, the patterns, the structure of our life, it opens a different universe. Suddenly we start to see ourselves, and therefore we start to see the world in a completely different, new manner, which is so exciting.
I want to, if it is okay, I want to recite here an anecdote about Buddha, just to show how this way of thinking is not, confined with one train of school of thought, but many. So the story is like this: that Buddha was once walking in the woods, and there someone met him, was walking there as well, and this person asked Buddha, "Are you a god?" "No, I'm not a god." Are you a guru?" "No, I'm not a guru." "So what are you then?" "I'm awake." So much, because the tendency that we see, like in the general, discourse about Africa, we see that this concept of awakening Africa, this is really some, energy driving us, I think, driving the African soul. So I let it be enough.
Beautiful. And yeah, it's very much part of the Silos doctrine or teachings, that we are asleep because our mind is populated by reveries, by fantasies, by dreams. And when we can stop all that activity, that is sort of equivalent of noise, then really there is awakening of the consciousness. And that is something that we can experience directly, personal, with lots of evidence. So we don't need anybody to come and tell us that it's like that. So it's really, really exciting, because when the consciousness awakes, the whole world awakes with the consciousness. And so that's an amazing thing, because everything exists within our heads, within ourselves. We change something here and everything changes around. So it's, but let's leave it here, because we have said enough things that are good food for thought. And we are not going to run short of interesting things, because we have all the literature and we have each other's company and we have the experience that we can share. So we have lots of resources. So all the best. Yes, Ragnar, you want to say something?
No, just wanted to say thank you. And yes, 1.5 hours, so I think we will continue next time.
Next time. And good luck in Eldoret with everything you are doing. Let's share all the information.
Yeah. So let me remind
it was a joy.
Yeah. The pages.
Yeah, clap for you, Antonino. Clap for you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
the lessons, is it 11th and
11th and 12th.
11th and 12th. So we should read that soon.
Yes, of course. The materials are there.
Yeah. Okay.
All the best.
All the best.
Cheers.
Yes. So peace, force, and joy.
Peace, joy.